Okay, so we start.
Number 3.
Yeah. So yeah, what shall we talk about?
Yeah, I think like
Yeah,
the
because
question still stands.
okay, we just had a discussion about if we should plan some topics or just go with the flow, and then there was a polarity.
Of course.
And you were like, maybe we can touch on these topics, and I was a little bit feeling like, oh, let's go with the flow.
Yeah,
But then oftentimes we still end up at some kind of middle ground often with these things.
that's true. And that's what we're doing right
Going with the flow and planning can also be similar. Because
the
if
thing,
you're
yeah.
going with the flow and you already had some things in your mind, then still you're also planning. So
now. That's actually a funny polarity that you can actually have the habit of just always going with the flow. So it's almost like it's always the plan. Oh, I'm just going with the flow.
yeah.
So it's kind of the default thing that you do. It's always your standard plan.
Well, then, yeah, maybe you have like a certain routine that you always go through. Also in conversations in social settings,
Yeah.
so, like is a nice example, right? Like,
Definitely.
I mean, do you always talk about the same things? Especially when you meet new people. It's a lot. Oh, what do you do?
Like,
Where are you
Where
from?
are you from?
Oh, the same thing. And do you have like an answer that you give like almost always the same answer, or do you switch it up?
Like a similar joke that you
Yeah, your jokes that always work that
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
kind,
maybe when girls ask, hey, where you from? Oh yeah, I'm from Netherlands. And then I have like a couple things that
me
sometimes
too.
flow out that are kind of similar. I did recently think, it would be actually a fun challenge when you're out and meeting people to try not to go to those default answers and
Okay.
make it a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Then you
Because-
would plan that then.
Yeah, you would plan it to not
Yeah.
go into the default things that you would often
Mm-hmm.
say. Just go completely through, improv, basically.
Yeah, and that would
Yeah.
be then a different thing than just going with the flow. That's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
interesting
Yeah,
distinction
but you
there.
decide to go more with the flow,
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah, but then you limit yourself from going into the default plan, which is
Yeah,
then
yeah,
your normal flow.
Yeah.
So
and I think also to go more meta, that's actually like how a lot of people could live their life. They're just in the default flow,
yeah,
just going into the hypnotic rhythm, and then they live their whole life, based on things in the news or other variables, and they're just so stuck in certain habits. And it's also for yourself.
I just
Okay,
want to
where are you doing that yourself?
I was gonna say, let's put up the mirror
yeah,
because we
of
can be
course.
like, oh, those people stuck in their things, but how are we still stuck?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
The thing is, like, when you're conscious of it, a lot of people aren't even conscious of it. But even if you're conscious of it, where do you still do the similar things,
Yeah.
or stay at a certain level of success because it's maybe comfortable? Don't do things that are really outside the comfort zone, because you can still do things that are sort of a little bit outside of the comfort zone. But okay, are you really stretching it to new levels? Because
Yeah.
that's always where the magic happens, as they say, of course.
And then, I mean, how can you can also fool yourself and like feel like you're going out of your comfort zone, but it's still within your known. Because often the things that are really we haven't done before or something like that, maybe we don't even think about those things,
That's the thing, yeah.
or we just avoid them. And then, I mean, that's what humans do. They just stay in the known often. And maybe they, it depends on the person. Some people do really go in radical new experiences.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, when they do a new experience, it's still within a known.
Yeah,
Still within a box. And I mean, we're not immune to this. But of course, as we try to sometimes challenge each other and, challenge ourselves to go out of these norms and create really new experiences. But if you look at it from a day-to-day level, like as humans, we're doing a lot of the same routines every day. Like it's just, and that's also a good thing. It's not that it's bad, because I think through routines we can build success. And we can actually grow towards something by doing the same thing over and over and over. If it's building something, then that's a really good to have good routines. But how can you be still stuck in your routines and never go out of them, which can also be where the growth is, or maybe the better opportunity which you are avoiding or not opening yourself up to because you're still stuck in your known. So it's good to always ask yourself that, I think.
Yeah, are you in the known? And some people do that more than others.
Yeah.
Some people are more inclined to go toward new things, but then when is it really something new? Maybe for that person that always goes to new things, maybe for them it's actually okay, can you actually keep a routine maybe and do the same thing every day? Maybe go to bed at the same time and do a meditation in the morning, and try to build that habit, because that's can be where the growth lies for that person. And but I do think that if you're maybe like us, like into personal and spiritual growth, then you also make it more a habit to go into new experiences and new polarities, because it's just so valuable. And the funny thing is often that, okay, maybe you can be afraid to go into new experiences, or let's say you move to a new country. Let's say you want to go to Thailand, and suddenly you're in Thailand, or you're in Vietnam, or you're in Hungary, where we live at the moment. And then once you have done it, it's really like, okay, why was there even a part of me that was maybe afraid or thought that was like very far out of reach? And then when you've done it, it's often just like, okay, it's like gets more normal.
Definitely. Yeah. It's funny, I think, that like we can be so scared of those new things, often also unconsciously. Just
that's the point.
Like not admitting that you can do something else because this is just who I am or something like that. But then oftentimes when you do something that you at first were like resisting, it's just, oh, this was, it's immediately, especially it's about like being in different places, traveling or living in different places. It's just, you go there and then it's like, well, now you're there. It's not scary at all, because now it's a known almost, It's so funny how fast that can go. I think most of the time that's really good to also remind yourself. That if you're like, that new thing, I don't know, and you're just not feeling it or postponing it, and then, probably it's just when you do it, it's like, okay, loses its,
The resistance is often much stronger before you do it. And it's also, if you're a man and you want to meet girls and you see a pretty girl and you're like, okay, oh no, I don't know if I'm approaching, and then you get stuck in your head, and then it can ruin your whole night. That you're just stuck in your head. But if at the beginning you just you see a nice girl, you just go talk to her, and just okay, it wasn't that bad. Even if you get rejected, that actually can boost your state.
Like most of the time, I think, like, that's just like, nothing. Nothing bad, really. Like,
just laugh it off.
Kind of
that
funny.
was quite funny, actually. Self-amuse, like be like, this was like actually like a funny thing to do. Like to just approach this group of girls or do something funny, and then after that, it's I'm free. You give yourself the permission to be free. From a place of just taking an action, which requires a little bit of courage.
Well, that's actually it, because the fear is just there, and then suddenly when it breaks and you're telling your reptilian brain or your old brain that is through evolution and stuff, however it went, but
it works,
it seems that it's used to these kinds of staying in little tribes, and if you would stand out, then you could get killed or something. At least that's the evolutionary psychology perspective. And then it's just like, there is not a fear of dying now. If you just, it won't be that some monkey is coming to you and is kicking you
out of the tribe.
So all good.
That's a funny thing, and this reminded me also of. You have like let's say the evolutionary perspective. Then you also have the spiritual perspective, where if you are too attached to your ego and just too focused on trying to have this identity that you keep and that you project outwards, if you would take a social risk and let's say even that person would reject you or something happens, that can be on the one hand, that kind of duality between, oh no, I got rejected, oh shit, or it can be, ha ha ha, I got rejected, that's so funny. And then the next girl you talk to, she's very attracted because you get out of your own ego, out of your own way. And that's
I think
also
actually
quite
women
funny.
are not aware that that I think oftentimes when men have a good approach, oftentimes it's not the first one.
Yeah, that's quite funny.
I mean, it can be, of course, but oftentimes it's you kind of warmed up a bit just by talking a little bit, being social, and then your brain gave yourself permission to really be yourself, to not live in that fear. And then from that moment, you meet the girl, and she thinks, "Oh, like this guy,
he's very confident,
and everything." But everyone still, even the people who have done that, the pickup artist guys who've done like 10,000 approaches or something, like they still also have the same often. So it's just in general, your brain works that way. It's the same as if we are just working and then we're going socializing. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit foreign. You kind of have to get into it. And of course, you can kind of, the more you do it, the more quickly you get into it. And it can also depend on just how you feel that day. Yeah. But if you've just been working with numbers and things and, and then suddenly you need to be social, it's just a different state.
Yeah, it's a different state.
Yeah. And so before you get into that state, it can, you can be a little bit rusty maybe in the beginning or something.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that. Then maybe the girl, let's say you talk to a girl and it goes very well, and you're very confident and very natural. Then that girl, that's my meditation alarm. That's quite funny. So we need to be present right now. That alarm goes or that bell goes every hour, and then you
take a moment.
Then you take a moment to.
They probably don't even hear it, but
maybe not. Yeah.
But
so you approach a girl, let's say, that goes very well. You're very confident, very natural. The flow is very good. Then that girl in that moment actually has like a feeling that you're always like that in that moment.
Yeah, that was the point.
Because she has like that feeling about you, and then that must be true.
Yeah,
and that's quite funny that works that way.
Yeah,
that the feminine can make that snapshot of how is a guy based on just how she feels in that moment. But that guy also has a lot of other moments where he feels very different.
Definitely. But the funny thing is for her, like she also sometimes doesn't have all those layers of makeup on her, etc. So it's funny how that works, right? I mean, I've been with quite a few women that also they were quite different in the morning. And then you're like, okay, interesting. I mean, that you kind of, you can really get tricked in a sense. Maybe sometimes women can feel that way too, that a guy presents himself in a certain context or something. And then
has more status.
And then like, oh, okay, it's not really true, or,
So guys have game and girls have makeup.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and clothes.
And of course they have their own way of doing things. Their
game in a sense.
But they it comes more natural, I think, also because they're just forced, because they're constantly if you as a guy don't really do much, then there's not much game going on. You have to initiate. If you don't initiate, then there's nothing going to happen. But if as a girl you're just sitting there on a bar stool or something, then they will get approached. I believe you once.
I was gonna.
You said something about that you read an article. Or...
Yeah, there was a video on YouTube. A guy was explaining about research that they did somewhere in France, and it was basically how much are girls being approached on average in a nightclub setting. That was one, and one was outside, like a terrace, but still quite a busy street. And they actually compared. It was the same girl that was sitting in those two places.
Okay.
But then the variable was that they stuffed her bra in certain scenarios. So she had in one, she had D cup and then C and then smaller.
Okay.
And then it was funny that it was still on average so many approaches. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the exact number, but it was
even
it
didn't matter
quite a lot.
The ugliest girl or the girl with the less
girl,
breast size was still getting approached.
The girl with less breast size was still it was the same girl, so it was the same attractiveness.
Oh, it was the same girl.
In terms of the face, and was quite slim also. But then it was at the one with the small breast size, which was probably her normal breast size. Still was about eight guys an hour, and the other one was I don't know, maybe it was like 14 an hour, like the biggest breast.
Yeah,
So
okay. It's interesting that it was just
like
breast
that.
size, because you could say that's not the only thing of female beauty, of course.
Yeah, of course. But it was
uh,
quite funny that, okay, and maybe logical, but yeah, the bigger breast size got more attention, got a lot more approaches.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that definitely was like a very big factor.
Yeah.
But it
Big
was
factor.
yeah, the big, very big. And the main message from the guy from this video was actually like, okay, if you walk up to a girl as a man and she is maybe not so nice to you, hey, fuck off, I'm with my friend. Brr. Yeah, just imagine that you get like approached 8 times an hour.
Yeah.
But even if you have like big breasts, then apparently maybe 14 times an hour.
I mean, it probably isn't that like that everywhere all the time.
Of course. But let's say,
in that specific setting.
She was also alone, so that can also make it more easy for guys to approach.
Less intimidating if she's with a group of girls or friends. Yeah. And so that's interesting to kind of know. And I mean, the women watching, they
let us know.
Probably,
are you approached a lot?
They probably know that how it is. And I think that's also always good to keep in mind when you as a guy are approaching.
Yeah.
That's, you don't take it personally.
Don't take it
because
personally,
it's also just like, at some moment you're like, just leave me alone,
Yeah.
And of course, often they also like being approached. I mean, for sure. But I can also imagine like another one, and then maybe they do like that. They have a little bitchy reaction, and the guy who still takes that well. I mean, that's of course not always the case. If she just says "fuck off," then it might be different. But like, if there's just a little bit like a rejection, but maybe you can re-engage at some point, and maybe she's warmer. Then that just means like that was just the shield, to keep the guys who don't have the confidence to try again or something.
That's the thing.
And I'm careful with my words because I can imagine that somebody could take it. Oh, then you want to harass the girls. That's not the point, of course. But it's funny, by the way. I mean,
can have some persistence.
I right now feel that I felt like I need to say something about that. Also well, I mean, I was just. It's a meta thought about it. It's more like I felt the need to say that. And in one hand, it's just like, oh man, we live in such a snowflake society that you couldn't even just talk about that for fear of that people would think that you are actually advocating like doing something nasty or something, right?
Don't want to be like Aubrey Marcus.
I mean,
or maybe you want to.
There's a lot of judgment everywhere. And,
judgment is a big,
and I think,
topic.
We can judge too.
Yeah, of course.
But I hope that when we judge, it's more like a discernment, and it's more like, I don't like that. Because if you're really judging someone, that's just just says something about yourself. Because judgment is just like true judgment, which is saying something's bad about someone else or a group of people. That's just often just a shadow projection. It's a part of yourself that you disowned.
That's the thing.
And you're judging yourself. Because else you could just say, oh, I don't like that. Or you have empathy because you think, oh, that person might be hurt, or their upbringing was different, or they have they're doing this weird thing, which is harmful or something. Because then you're like, oh, okay. But if your reaction is like,
oh, this is bad. This
then
is evil.
That's just automatically that says something to yourself that there is something there. That a part of yourself is just like that, and you just put that away because you were you feared what other people think of you.
Say, and that's actually why I jokingly brought up the Aubrey Marcus situation, because that's a good example of where you see that a lot, that people judge it.
Maybe you can explain what it is then.
Basically Aubrey Marcus introduced
who is like an influencer, spiritual influencer.
I'm sure if you're into spirituality that you probably have seen it, because it's all over the spiritual community. And he's an influencer, and basically he introduced a younger girl into his marriage with his wife. So now it's kind of like
weren't they engaged or were they married?
He refers to her as his wife.
Okay.
And again, I was gonna say, I don't know all the details. I haven't studied it extensively, but just based on the reactions of people, you could already see that people were quite polarized.
Yeah, so he was in a relationship with his wife,
and
then
now there's
a new girl.
And then
they're in a triangle relationship
and
now.
then there were a lot of people that said some things about it, like, hey, this is wrong, and etc. And you should be in a monogamous relationship, and that's the only way to have like a sacred union. Just a lot of different polarities that are going on. And like all these polarities, they are worthy of being explored. But I think the meta frame is really that you could look at situations like that and really look at, okay, where if you feel the immediate reaction, oh, this is wrong, oh, how could this person do that, oh, there's so much manipulation, etc., then you can look at your own shadows. Where do you maybe do that exact same thing? Because that's often how shadow projection works. That you see other people doing it. It's like the government, or it's this influencer, or it's this or that person. But often, if you have that reaction, that is actually often evidence that you do that yourself in some kind of way, or that you've really disowned those parts that maybe also want certain things that are maybe outside of the norm.
Often it is that also,
and that's just something to be conscious of. I mean, Aubrey Marcus, that situation is just one example. Are there any others that come to mind for you?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to touch on this too. Like, I think just something happens in somebody's private life. Okay, this guy's an influencer, then he promotes it. But probably people were already looking up and infatuating, looking up infatuated, which is the opposite of judgment, by the way, which is an interesting thing to touch on. Because like the infatuation is the opposite polarity of it, which is where actually you might be romanticizing someone, thinking they're amazing, and almost worshipping them. And this happens with gurus too and stuff. And then certain political leaders, where people are like, oh, this person is is like Jesus Christ on earth, and they worship them. But that also comes from a disowning of those parts that you see in the other. Where you're so much thinking this person is so amazing, but those are also neglected parts of yourself that you're recognizing there. So it can go both ways. It can be something you judge, and it can be something that you really, really admire, but into an unhealthy level.
And then the funny thing is, when you have that infatuation, then if that infatuation is broken, it's like
then you start judging. Story,
then you're like, oh, what the fuck? Then you feel also as if it's something personal, because it's part of your identity.
This was you were infatuated with these people. And now they do something that maybe breaks your... I mean, for instance, in this case, a lot of women are following him, for instance, and they might think, oh, this beautiful monogamous relationship, true love exists. True soulmates coming together, and then wait, this guy introduces another girl into the relationship. He's manipulating her, and look, she cried on the podcast, and whoever. We don't know that whole situation. We're not there. But it's just interesting, and then a lot of people start talking about it. Look, he's spiritual, but he does this. Whoever side you take, because I think there you can look at both sides, and maybe you can say something for both sides. But it's just about this emotional reaction that people can have. And I think, maybe they were admiring this guy, and then suddenly, that dream breaks because you were that example who had a good relationship, and that's what I want. And then it's like, and now he starts doing this. So that's how it works, right? And it's just an interesting trait of human beings. I mean, I can imagine, there's many times that we also, with friends and people we meet, that they might say something to you. Like, hey, you're kind of doing this. And then it's more like, but that's actually what that guy always does, right? But the guy...
do you have an example? That I understand the point a bit better?
There was an example.
Okay. Now I understand what you want to say. So basically shadow projection. So they basically say to, let's say, a group or other people, like, they... no, they're only chasing girls and all these things.
That's a perfect example.
And while they do it themselves. Or, we talked about this in another podcast, but, maybe somebody that's very against gays, but then in the end, they're a closet gay themselves. And they're like a priest that goes to BDSM parties. So we talked about that already. So we're going to try and go to other subjects. But... that's just a very interesting way of how darkness in your unconscious mind gets expressed outwardly in judgment. So it is always good to be aware if you are judging something very harshly, then just be aware of that. I think that's like,
well, I mean, it's an awareness of yourself, because I mean, that's actually, it's a nice, whenever you notice it within yourself, you don't have to judge the judger also. I mean, it's just about the noticing, oh, I'm having these strong reactions about someone else, about something. And then it's more like, okay, that means there's growth there. That means that, oh, I might not be fully aware that I do feel like I judge this, like this is bad. Yeah. And who knows, you can also end up in a place where you still think it's not a good behavior or thing to do. That's not the point, right? It's more about there might be another part of you that, you know, does something similar, is similar, that may, you know, that
doubts your own polarity.
Yeah, doubts
secretly, you know, you're a bit,
you're like, oh, you maybe, that's a very good point. Like maybe you've built this identity. I am this person. Yeah. And that means that you're not that person, the opposite or something that's different from that. Yeah. And you've built it up so much that like you have to believe it now. It would be such a shame if you now just have something that's not congruent with that. Oh, yeah.
This is with conspiracies a big thing also.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Maybe you lived your whole life in a certain way, thinking the world is a certain way. And then, let's say you're a little bit older. I think it's more relevant because when you're young, you maybe switch more in your worldview. But let's say you're 60 or 70 and you've never thought about that. There's like a conspiracy, and then there's some people talking about that World Trade Center was maybe an inside job. You're like, what are you talking about? That's so stupid. Like, because it's so foreign to the polarity and the identity that you've built up that you don't even go there. So then also, that's how judgment also happens. You judge it. Oh no, that's so stupid. Why would people believe that? And that, is a way to remain safe in your comfort zone and your identity and your worldview.
You don't have to admit to yourself that you were wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's also a big thing.
And that's of course where again, because then it's your fault. Ooh. And then you touch on the main guilt wound that you're not enough, that you're bad, because that's where it kind of comes from, right? It's more that you built this thing, this identity, and that came from a certain way of being. You had to be a certain way because else you were a bad little boy or girl. Yeah. Or even if it comes at a later stage of life that you move into being a certain way, it's often because you didn't want to be something else. Yeah. There's a fear around something else. Yeah. And then it's just, I'm like this, I'm not like that. And as soon as you're doing the not like that, you can push it away. Unless you do it really consciously, but especially at those ages where you kind of get formed, you're not really, you don't know. They don't teach us that, you know. I mean, I wonder if you really, if at some point we become parents, if we, if you get kids, I get kids, then at some moment it would be, if you teach kids at a young age how to deal with those things better, that would be, you create a different life. Oh, amazing. And maybe personality would also be more fluid. I don't know. Like, it's interesting because, these formative years, I'm not sure how conscious they could be in those moments, but who knows, you don't know what's possible when kids really get, these different ways of, they understand how these things work at a basic level or something. What kind of humans would that create? I don't know. It's an interesting experiment.
Have you seen that? You've also seen that video of that they're training kids to do like these spiritual psychic things. And I haven't looked into it in detail.
There's something called the telepathy tapes, which is a different one than the one you think. But that seems legit. Yeah. That that was with autistic kids and. I think, I'm not sure if it was just autistic, but neurodivergent kids, let's say.
Okay, interesting.
And they actually could, they proved telepathy. Oh, okay. So they did studies and they proved telepathy. So that's, you can just different words they can send to each other, things like that. And there's also this other experiment. I don't know what the name is, but where they are putting kids and then they're showing cards, or they're blindfolded, and then they can read what is on the card and stuff. I mean, I wasn't there, but it also looks legit.
It seems legit.
And you know, we know that these types of things are possible.
Yeah.
I mean, even the CIA has done a lot of research on it, and there's a lot of documents that have been publicized about it. I mean, remote viewing is something that has been used by the government, by many different governments, you know, which is a way of projecting your consciousness somewhere to view what's going on there, for instance. And they've used that with success. The CIA and you know, there's white papers on it and stuff. So
interesting, yeah.
You know, it's interesting, and I mean, I would of course want to see it for real with the skits, like if you know, like telepathy and stuff. I mean, but I definitely think it's possible. Yeah.
I mean, if your consciousness raises, then certain psychic abilities can come more online, and it kind of reminded me of that. Maybe this is one example that you see the kids doing these types of things, and then there's also some guys on Instagram and other places that have like these psychic powers with their hands, and they can move like objects.
Who knows if it's true?
Maybe they're faking it, but
or maybe
also
there are some fakers and some are real. We don't know.
Some seem to have students also that are able to then do certain things, and it can go quite extreme to certain things.
Yeah, you mean like the telekinesis?
Telekinesis, that they can move like plastic bottles from a distance or light like a candle.
I mean,
and stuff.
Be a cool. It's a cool party trick.
It's a cool party trick.
I'm not sure how useful it is, but it is kind of cool. I mean, it's,
I think that's the use, right? Like it's kind of cool.
I mean, you could prove like if you can really do that, like, and let's say there's a very materialist atheist there. That would be the fun of it. I would say. Fun of it. Then you're like, oh, you think like everything's so rational, like that's
You can. I have control over the 4 elements.
I mean, those would be amazing videos. By the way, and why they're making that's always the thing. They're often alone. Are they not doing it like in public with people? Like, I mean,
that's the thing. Yeah.
And then people would say, it's a magic trick because there's also magic tricks.
Oh yeah, and people do that also probably, right? I mean, there is this famous like rational scientist guy that has some kind of prize,
a challenge
where they do like a challenge where if you can actually prove your psychic abilities or your telekinesis,
then
or
you could
something
get
like
money,
that,
and nobody has ever broken it. But how does that go? It's interesting, Or is it that because the guy's there and he doesn't believe it, it has an influence on your abilities? But then how much is your ability?
How much is your ability worth then? But
it's interesting.
It would be awesome if somebody breaks it at some point.
It's up to us, I think. We need to train.
Funny,
That would be cool. Yeah, you could move the camel, our little prop.
Nice.
But I was gonna say something about. It made me think about AI. Because of course, nowadays already. I mean, people make videos. Okay, so let's see. You see a lot of these videos of the guy moving the water bottle. Okay, could be.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking like. Oh man, if you see like what the new model from Google, what is the name? VO?
The name's
VO2 or something.
Yeah.
Making videos with AI, with speech and sound that look like very, very realistic. And this is the model now. Imagine what it is in a year. It's crazy. And we are now just at the moment, it's not fully everywhere. But maybe within a half a year, like the whole internet is flooded with these types of videos where you're just not sure. You're never sure again. Is this real or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, is this person who says to have this experience or something, is that real? Or is it just someone who just made a prompt? And what will that do to our society? What is that going to do to how people behave? And the way we look also at things on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you never know what's true anymore, I don't know. It's interesting. That's a weird experiment.
That's a very weird
I mean, it was already the case that people could fake stuff. But still, oftentimes you're like, this looks legit. But now it will just be like, I just don't know. And then I can imagine that the government or governments will be like, oh, but then we have our digital ID and it's coupled to your social accounts, and then they can see if it really is you. There will be some way of verifying it, which in a way could be a good thing. But we don't trust those governments because we know that what they're trying to do with that is just really nefarious. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and so what do you think that would do to people?
I honestly don't know. I think one of the things that, funnily enough, it might also bring people closer together in the real life.
Yeah.
Because it will just become more valuable because you're just so sick of all the fakeness.
That's the thing. Yeah,
I think that can be one thing. And the other thing is, I think that people can just go really crazy and crazy rabbit holes.
And crazy AI, virtual reality.
And virtual girlfriends, boyfriends.
Girlfriends, little toy robots that kids talk to. Which seemed quite awesome, by the way. That seemed really cool.
Yeah, we saw like a toy with...
A toy that has ChatGPT integrated. Yeah. So you can basically... teach it certain things, and then it talks to your kid. Hey, hello, Sam. Yeah, okay, awesome. Oh, you hurt your knee. That's no problem. You can, still be, good, and it will be fine. And do you want to go out and play later? Yes, and you can ask it questions. So a kid.
Imagine growing up like that.
Yeah, you have like an imaginary friend, but actually it's a real toy,
and you can talk endlessly with it.
Endlessly, and it's always nice. Until it's maybe not.
Until it turns on you.
Until they flip the switch. Yeah. And then all the toys, they become...
And suddenly your vacuum AI cleaner starts taking over.
Yeah. And that can happen, if AI goes rogue.
Yeah.
If AGI and all these things. And there's a lot of people warning about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic.
But the interesting thing about it is that... a lot of people tend to assume that if AI becomes much smarter than all humans, that it will become evil.
Yeah.
So that's quite funny. Actually, we talked about this recently. That's maybe also a projection from humans, how we think about ourselves. Yeah. That we're actually quite evil and that there's a lot of evil in the world.
Yeah, so then you think then it must be bad. That it will be bad. I mean, if somebody gets ultimate power, which, I mean, to be honest, that is what happens with humans oftentimes.
That is also a thing.
But maybe the thing won't have the human biases. But I mean, I also do see the other side. We don't know. Like, this thing is, if it's not human and you program it a certain way. But, what is a human life to a non-human, to something that's artificial in that sense? Maybe not a lot, but who knows? Maybe it will save us all.
Yeah, it becomes super benevolent. And, it's like, I'm super
Everyone
smart.
Thought it would be Armageddon, but suddenly
it
it's
helps
like
everybody. And, it destroys,
removes all the conspiracy people, the bankers, and all the evil people who are in charge.
Yeah, it keeps the conspiracy people because they. Or you mean the people doing the conspiracy?
Yeah, I mean the people in the conspiracy.
Yeah, the people doing the conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean the people who are conspiring to make our planet a slavery society.
A slavery planet.
Yeah, slavery. Prison planet.
Prison planet, you could call it. Yeah. With digital ID and CBDCs. Social credit, carbon credit stuff.
Yeah, that's where it's moving, and it's moving rapidly in that direction in many ways.
In the UK, you see a lot of things that are heading in that
direction. If you post something on Facebook with a political opinion that is not that they don't like, then they can just go to your home, and they can even arrest you for. They can even arrest you for retweeting something.
That's so insane. You just retweeted something.
That's where you always felt comfortable. Let's say, behind your computer, just reacting to some political stuff, and now suddenly, it's an offense if you say something that's goes against it because they can deem it to be hate speech or something. I mean, it happens a lot with people criticizing the immigration policy. But you can't criticize a policy.
Yeah, that's so insane.
Because then it's hateful. Yeah. That's insane. That's next level. I mean, of course, there might be some people saying racist things, but still, okay.
It's just point.
they say something. Let's say somebody says something racist. I am not against that free speech. I don't like that person. Maybe I don't, but I still defend their right to say it because it's a slippery slope. If you start, if you start getting people, if you start jailing people for speech.
Yeah.
Because that's how every authoritarian, government or structure has always, that's how it starts.
That's how it starts.
It's just you can't say things anymore. I mean, you're gone. That's your number one thing. The freedom of expression. And okay, I can understand. You don't want to really incite violence. Okay, if you put the line there, okay, fine. But if you just say something negative about some people, if you judge them. You still should be allowed to judge them,
the thing.
Because where is the line? Where do you draw the line? And suddenly you just said something and it could have hurt someone's feelings, and now hate speech.
Oh, hate speech.
Yeah.
And that's also the main characteristic of when you know that there is some type of agenda. If you can't make the other point, I don't like the immigration, and there's too many. People coming to I saw this one example of a little UK village. Maybe there were 300 to 400 people living there, and they lived there for decades, maybe even centuries. Beautiful village. And then they were building an asylum center next to this village with about 300 to 400 asylum seekers, and all the people in the village were like, what the fuck,
we're being replaced,
and people getting robbed and stuff. And the girls felt unsafe on the streets. And
so they have been living there their whole life.
Like maybe
and suddenly like some politician decides
this is what we need to do.
We need to put the center place with just the same amount of people that were there before. And they're like, oh no. And there your normal English way of life suddenly is very different. And then you are a racist for saying something about that. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that's the weaponizing of speech also. That's the weaponizing of people of virtue signaling of people wanting to do the good thing.
Being a good
and then you must be racist because you don't want people from different cultures who probably come from very poor cultures, different ideas about women and stuff, and what's acceptable behavior. And then you're not a racist for pointing that out, right? That's not racist at all. But because you can, that's how weird it becomes. And then let's say they assault, they SA, sexually assault. I don't know if we can say those terms.
Maybe.
But, they sexually
maybe not if we were in the UK. If we would make this podcast in the UK, we would probably be arrested.
Oh yeah.
No, but seriously, maybe it would actually happen.
Maybe, yeah. No.
So I'm not going to go to the UK anytime soon.
Let's say they sexually assault someone, and then something happens, and then you say something about that. Then you're a racist, right? You cannot even talk about reality anymore. It's funny how these things can become so weaponized and so so weird. You have to deny reality now because else you might be a racist. When you're not a racist, but you just don't want those people who come from a very different way of life without any money or something into your, it's shit happens, and it's not weird, right?
Not weird,
and so that's why these topics are also so complicated, because they do create real racists. People over polarize into the other direction, and they start hating all black people, or and it's because of that, that divide that is created. But it's hard to have a nuanced opinion about these things, because people are like, so you're a racist? Or you're either for it or you're against it. Or you're for these types of people or against it. When we're like, no, it's just normal. I just don't want my daughter to get sexually assaulted, right? It's not weird.
And you had that weird thing in Germany where...
yes, I was going to go there
too. A woman criticized something online about...
There was a gang.
Was the gang that raped a girl, and they got a certain punishment, and then somebody commented online, a woman, oh, this is really bad, we should send them all back to their own country or something
and
like that.
And then she was the one who got a higher sentence than the people who
actually did it.
Yeah.
So then you can really see
Man,
that
that's
things are
think
like quite
about
fucked
that.
up.
Think about that.
And that's
That's
maybe
unbelievable.
even-
And
that's
I
like
mean, that's
insane,
for
yeah.
in Germany, they're really
Yeah.
guilt tripping based on the Second World War.
Also, yeah.
The wokeness there.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also a counter movement of
Yeah.
more far right people
Oh,
who are
yeah. Well, you
created
see-
because of this nonsense. So that
That's how polarities
that's how the
created.
polarities are created,
Yeah.
and then you get two extremes when we should all just chill and be a little bit more in the middle.
A middle, and also a funny thing that arose from this is also the new Kanye West song.
Oh God. Let's
And
not say those words.
He referred to like the Austrian painter in this song.
Yeah, the HH he's saying.
And it's just very interesting that this person made that, but he is black.
Yeah. And he's saying
and then a lot
N-words, and then Heil, huh? And like
in one song. So I mean, like a weird mind to do that, but then at the same time, you see in society that these polarities are really also being really amplified. That a lot of things are going on with people maybe noticing certain things with maybe Palestine and
Israel.
And Israel. So what does that also create? A little bit more sympathy from certain people for the more extreme right.
Yeah, on the right,
policies.
there's a lot of people who might become more towards national socialism, let's say. And then on the left, there are people who are just more just very pro-Palestine, and to be honest, what's going on there is
horrible,
crazy. And I think, I mean, that's not a judgment to say something about that, because I mean, it's just horrible. It's just horrible.
That they could do that in these times.
I posted some videos about it where you saw children crying, and while there's bombings and stuff, and it's unbelievable what Israel did. And and this is also like this touchy subject, because as soon as you say something about Israel, then there's this weaponized term, anti-Semitism, and then they're saying, you're an anti-Semite. No, I'm just critical of bombing children. And and like such an overreaction from what happened on October 7th, which is also a very fucking interesting event, by the way, because that could not have happened that way without some allowance from high officials in Israel. Because for hours and hours, there was no reaction. When normally, when somebody just farts over there, there's already like a direct response. And for hours they could do their thing. So this was an allowed thing. But it's crazy also how the world doesn't really pick up on those things, right? How that's not the focus then. Like, look what you guys, how is it possible that everyone stood down while that happened, and you let those people loose and like do horrible things, I'm sure, with Israeli people, civilians, which is horrible. But then that was just allowed. That must have been allowed. It's almost impossible in any other way. So and then to allow that, and now they're just going in, and the gloves are off. And even while a lot of people in the world are noticing and are saying things, they're just doing it. And so far, the U.S. is still backing them. So Trump, we don't know what he will do, but it seems like he still supports Israel, and it's just he's like playing a little bit with it,
and
like,
then he went back.
He does support them. No, he doesn't support them anymore. I don't know. I feel like people are being played.
Maybe he doesn't want the war with Iran, but
let's hope so. Let's hope so. Let's hope at least he doesn't want war with Iran. Because we
don't need more wars.
That's like horrible. That
Iran,
could be,
or also more wars with Russia.
It could go nuclear,
In Europe, they're also doing a lot of things. In Romania, and maybe certain things in Poland, and some indications that they might want to provoke Mother Russia even more as the European kind of army.
Now that the US is not supporting that war, and then the Europeans are, they're going to schools. I saw these things that also in the Netherlands, NATO is now going to school children and giving lectures and stuff about NATO and how good it is, and
how
how bad Russia is and stuff
Really?
like that. So they are also doing this in the Netherlands, because I know
really?
I heard this
Okay, yeah.
before, that they were doing it in France and Germany, but now they're going to our kids, and they're propagandizing them, which is that's a scary thing to think
also
about.
Also very evil.
It is really evil, but it's also about what is the mindset here? Does that mean that they're long game that they're playing? What are they trying to get us to? Because that's a war that will lead to destruction of the whole planet. If they let it escalate. I mean, if you're gonna keep poking, then it's just at some moment who will push the button. And when the button is pushed, I mean, all the things I've seen from it, like, that's almost like, done. Everything's done. It's just done. So I also often really do not understand these people that you can see in politics and stuff who are like, yay, we should, go war and Russia. Let's bring the troops to Russia. And then it's like, even if you believe that it's the most horrible and that Putin wants to take over the world, which I find highly unlikely. I don't think.
Watch out, you don't touch the cord. I was just saying. It went quite close.
Okay.
Just a technical.
Okay.
But continue.
Yeah, even if you think that Putin is like the new Hitler, then still, do you realize that if you keep poking, it's just not. You should always try to de-escalate the situation, and it doesn't feel like they're trying to de-escalate the situation, at least in Europe.
Maybe they're already so deep, like with Ukraine, and also Zelensky, and that they also need it. So there's probably the reason why they do it is because they, of course, get benefits from it. So on the one end, with the weapon manufacturer, so there's money being made, of course, but then a war situation. Even if it doesn't escalate to a nuclear war, that's already a good recipe for enacting more control on a society. A lot of normal governance goes out the window, and you have maybe martial law kind of situations. And then you can take your Great Reset and Agenda 2030 and all these things to the next level. And maybe they are convinced that Russia wouldn't fire the nuclear bomb,
that's the question, because that is sometimes where I'm like, okay, so what's the double agenda here? Because we know, those governments and stuff, they're not really running the show. We know that there's a cabal, or a group of central bankers mixed with royalty, mixed with some the oligarchs, tech oligarchs, and stuff that seem to run the show. At least we don't know how much. We don't know how much Trump is under control. We don't know how much they have control everywhere. But in general, we just you see where society is going. You see what these people who you see the things behind the scenes of, and then I really wonder how they think about this war. I really wonder if they might know something that it won't go to that nuclear war, or that is the most scary thought, if they actually want it in some way, and that they are preparing to go underground, because there is also a lot of things about people building bunkers and stuff, and and that is I just hope it doesn't go there, and my optimism is that we're not on that timeline. Let's hope it doesn't go there, and that it's just that they just go, they push it because they use that war to, remove a lot of wealth from all the countries, and use it as a threat, and maybe create martial law or whatever, and maybe even have a little war, but not to the fullest extent, to further their agenda of the digital prison. I mean, that would still be much better than just really destroying everything that lives on this planet.
That would be a lot better. Destroying everything.
We prefer the digital prison over just destruction of everything.
I do also think, in the case with nuclear weapons, though, the party that fires first knows that the other party will retaliate. So that's also why it is actually highly unlikely that it would happen. I mean, there's still chance, but because there's kind of like a checkmate on both sides, you could say, right?
Yeah.
So if one
it
party
just means
does
like,
one,
let's all die. That's just a button,
So,
the all die button.
Let's all die. So it makes it makes no sense.
But it's a psychological game. But who is crazy enough to push the button? That's the thing. If there is a person who's like, oh, brr, and like,
fuck it.
Like in rage. I mean,
good.
And these leaders are also not the most spiritually advanced human beings.
Which you could also wonder why they are even leaders in the first place.
Oh yeah,
I do.
Oftentimes puppets. And they have their own game. They want power for themselves, and then they're still being used by some family above that or something.
But it would be cool if you have a future world where, let's say, there would always still be leaders, but it would all be quite transparent, and maybe leaders would have to go through certain initiations where they go into their shadow, go into their trauma and all these things, and then that they're actually authentically being tested and held to a certain standard before they are actually allowed to, rule. Or maybe not even that it's like allowed, but more like, but this can be like a free system.
Yeah, I mean,
this is exactly my point. Like, let's say people would want to more consciously choose their leaders.
Yeah, that's a very different thing than that we should force them to go
I was
going to
make the point of that's like voluntary.
Okay.
So you could say, that's available. That maybe if people would want to, like, let's say, choose certain leaders, maybe that would just be a standard. Like, I'm going to buy this product in the store that maybe has these characteristics. Maybe it's organic, maybe it's this. So it's just more a preference. And then there can still be maybe a company that facilitates the testing.
I mean, it would still be. I think that would be something that would be created naturally if we just stop violating the non-aggression principle, that you don't just enact violence or on peacefully acting human beings.
Oh yeah.
No.
In what kind of way would then what I said happen naturally?
Well, because that is because voluntary. So you choose your leader in a way he doesn't have the right to initiate violence on someone else. Yeah. So in a society like that, then there would be just people who do more and who start to lead companies and things like that, buy pieces of land, whatever, and then you would naturally choose someone that is that you want to follow. That people would follow some certain human beings would just do more stuff and lead more things, organize more things, and those would be leaders in a way. But if they don't have the right to force stuff on other people, then that would be naturally, it would be that way, right? I mean, the people who would naturally often be more enlightened, let's say, but maybe not. We don't know how that will go.
It's interesting what would happen. That's if you let it more free, and then I do think it would go more towards the positive. I do, especially if people would adhere to the non-aggression principle and all these things. You would still have maybe a divide between the rich and the poor. I mean, that would probably always still exist. Like the thing with how people choose leaders, just to go back to the point that we were making earlier, they're often quite infatuated. Oh, this person is going to change all these things. Oh, this person is going to make it happen, while being quite unaware of, let's say, the shadow sides that maybe this leader has, or the darkness that they have. So then maybe in a new type of society, people would just be more conscious of also those aspects that would make a good leader. Let's put it that way.
Let's hope so.
And then people could still choose the leader that they would want. I mean, that's always the funny thing with freedom, that they could also choose to have like the tyrant in a sense. But it's a nuanced topic.
If it's consensual, let's say. I mean, I think these how do you call it? Hypothetical situations. Yeah. I think maybe for us, it's also just about, can we create something that is an antidote to this world, and that feels a little bit more realistic in a smaller sense. Let's say, because I'm not sure how much the world will change in our lifetime, that people would truly see the light, in the sense that they would stop killing each other and stop believing in authority, and that start
that's the thing,
being infatuated and thinking that other people have more rights than they do, to create a free society. But maybe we can, at least for ourselves, create a mini version of that, where there's just people who think this in a similar way, have the same goals, and then we just buy some pieces of land somewhere, and not become like this culty community that often, I saw like this commentary also. Joe Rogan was also talking about it with some girl who studied mind control, about cults and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because that's often how it starts. And Joe Rogan was commenting on like, oh yeah, then in the beginning it just looks so great, like these people, they're just happy eating together and dancing and stuff. And for instance, with the Osho community, there's this documentary about it, I forgot the name, on Netflix, and it's about this Osho, Bhajan is his name also, I don't know, something like that, and
That's
then
his name,
yeah, he has two names, Bhagwan or something like that. At least the Osho guy, who it is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and he had like a whole community, and at certain moment, like, start arming themselves, and there's also a psycho.
Why did they start arming themselves?
I mean, they have trouble with people in the village and stuff. I don't remember it, but it ends up being really bad. But Joe Rogan was also just commenting on these different cults, and how in the beginning it's just great. And then often there's just this leader or multiple leaders, and they start abusing their power, and then they start having sex with everyone, and it's just non-consent and everything. It's just funny how that goes, and that's not what I mean when we're going, what we want to create. And so you have to be a little bit careful with these things. But I do think
what
that
is the trap then?
I mean, well, first of all, I think power. I think when you get power, and when people start seeing you as a leader, that you have to be quite spiritually developed to not let that get to your head and your ego. Not abusing your power, and you just don't know how you feel then. I mean, I don't think that would happen to me, but I can understand that there could be that your shadow can come out in different ways. And,
I mean, I can.
And it's just good to think about, and it's also not the leader or the people organizing it. I mean, the people in the community, you can get a lot of problems. Right? And I don't also want it as, I prefer not to have just a community. I think there should be some individuality also.
Of course.
It's just not just a community and like a religion, and it has to be some, but at least I think it would be, let's say, if you just take it from, let's say you go and you live somewhere, you start living in a little town with all your friends and their families. Let's say. I mean, that was something like that. I think that's already a community. And if you have some shared goals and some shared rituals, some things that you do together, some shared holidays, some, you help each other with food and you help each other with things, with personal development. You have meals with each other if you want to.
The kids get
kids can play together
from different types of people with different types of skills.
You can create a new type of education. You can create better health care than what we've known. You can create better mental health help and things like that could be amazing. That could be amazing. And I think that's something that we also want to create at some point.
Which we will create.
Yeah, we will.
But let's see.
There's just no other option, actually.
There's probably no other option.
Yeah, because the world is just becoming so much more authoritarian. And at certain moments, not to scare anyone, but I think that's just a good way to move more towards that, creating more wholeness, more freedom, more pro-human. Instead of anti-human, because I always think like it's more going anti-human. Like freedom and prosperity and health is pro-human. But like all the other stuff, what they're trying to bring people to is just anti-human.
It's anti-human, And I think to touch on your point, when a cult or a group can go bad, is actually also when there is, let's say, a leader or cult leader, you could say. Maybe they don't refer to themselves, of course, as a cult leader, But that's often when a certain narrative about how to see the world or how to see spirituality or how certain things are seen, that is put into place.
Yeah.
And you are not actually really allowed to question that.
Yeah.
So that then also is where if you have a group like that, that multiple polarities and different ways of seeing the world and different ways of, being, that could all coexist next to each other. And that also, if you find something bad, that you can comment on that, and that there is freedom to express your opinion and all these things.
Yeah.
Because I think if you have that as the fundamental basis, that you're also not stuck in your own polarity, very polarized about how you see things, so you can transcend the ego more, then from that place a community would work a lot better.
For sure. Yeah. So they should
Or
just follow the third way.
Follow the third way. Yeah,
no, in a good way.
In a good way.
I'm kidding, but that's the funny thing about our philosophy or about the third way, is that it's not so polarized.
It's not so polarized. Yeah, and that's idea, and that's also the antidote. And of course, you can still take that and still be very polarized about that, but
then you kind of miss the point.
Miss the point a bit. Yeah.
I mean, we can use polarity and we can be polarized to create attention for things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that can be good on social media or something.
And also an experience for yourself.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you understand that there's always multiple sides.
Nice. Some Dutch game.
There's always multiple
Dutch
sides.
side come out, and the English side on the other.
And then that already has some nice fail-safe mechanisms inside of it. Mm-hmm. So it's good to do that with people who kind of understand that. That's maybe a good point. I think.
Who understand that... you can integrate multiple polarities, and that the growth is often in the other polarity. Yeah. So then probably it's also, let's say you feel like a leader and you're really in that role, and people look up to you, and then maybe it's like, okay, maybe you, for fun, now you're not the leader anymore, and then you go into the other polarity. Just for your personal and spiritual growth, for example. Maybe you later return, or, just as an example, okay, like how can you transcend the ego and all these things, but then also it just not to make it like not
ego in like bad, a
darkness is
way.
bad, all these things.
You don't want dogmatism, but you can. I think especially when you go and live together with people, you need some rules,
of course,
and you need to have ways to resolve conflicts and stuff. So you need some polarity people. Who know about polarities and like, you said this and you said this. Okay, can you go into the other side? Can you kind of and I mean, if you have people who are on that path and who are thinking about that, it might be a lot easier. It might actually succeed for once, something like that, and it being amazing. Because I think that is, for instance, what Joe Rogan was kind of showing, that kind of human reaction, that if you see people living differently than our current day society, the way we live right now, I mean, in a way it's really good, but in a way it's just not.
Also quite shit.
It's just
very
people
alien.
are just living quiet lives of desperation often in their job, and then escaping in the weekends, or in Netflix or whatever it is, and it's just a sad life. There could just be life could just be so much more than that, and I do think it is from some type of community where there are people who you can trust. There are people around you who want the best for you too. And then you get back to how humans are probably supposed to live more. Because, that is what we used to do in a way. And there were quite a few negatives still of tribes killing each other and stuff like that. But I think we miss that cohesion. Now you're just living in some apartment and you don't even know your neighbors, and most of the time. And it's just very different than if you have this support group that is really there for you, and maybe in a new way where we're all trying to grow together, where we're all trying to, make this actually the best experience that we can do with technology in a good way, then we can live in paradise. And then when you say you start to sound like one of those culty people. So you still have
you
to
don't
kind
have to nuance.
Really, like I do, but I do think it's funny because that is, of course, always the promise. We can live in paradise and everything. So it's just interesting, but I do think it can be done in a good way.
Yeah, and it's also by not denying like the dark parts of humanity, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
If there are people, we all have a desire for power, and we all have a desire for love. So that can also exist. So it's also not about shunning the darkness. I think that's really important. And even if you would start a community and things would happen that go more that direction, that can also have benefits where we can all at that moment then learn from that and then also maybe transcend that. But that's like also innate in human beings. Yeah. That there is also a selfish part. Yeah. And there is a part that wants power, and there is a part that, wants to get things for me.
Definitely.
And that's also something that is very beneficial, because if you look then at the opposite of the Good Samaritan, which we talked about, and being like a good shepherd, that is the thing that rulers often use to further their own agenda.
Well, yeah.
All the people that, support
but that's
the planet.
Shadow way of being. If people are like, look at me, I'm for the policies, for the woke policies.
I'm so good.
And then it's just like, but you're not really like that.
Yeah, you're not really
You're
like
just scared of being ostracized, or you just want to, fit into the group and stuff. Yeah. And so, I think like it's very important to just work on those shadow sides and mature them and have healthy outlets to also engage in those behaviors without harming others. If you can create those things, we can create heaven on earth. But I think it's a nice way to end the podcast, or do you still want
heaven on earth is it's like a 1-1-1-1.
Oh wow, that's a spiritual. So, but
then it might be the best moment.
But don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment. We'll read it and answer you. Do
we want to give any other announcements? Maybe if somebody is interested in doing maybe coaching or something like that, there can also be a link.
There can be a link. If there's a link, you can click it, and if we have time, then we might be able to
do something. You. And maybe you can learn about polarities and things like
Who knows,
that. It can be an interesting path to walk, to integrate polarities and also to depolarize yourself. And then, I think that's all for this podcast.
Peace.